What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here with Porsche Von Panda. Thought I'd take you for a little ride. I want to tell you a little story about why I wanted this particular Cayenne, and then tell you a little story about how I got it, because I think it's kind of interesting. A couple things that came into mind when I was looking for one was replacing my GMC Terrain, which I still have, and we'll put some miles on it. But my Terrain has about 50,000 miles on it now, and it's been a good vehicle, but I wanted something to replace it that was just a little bit more stylish. I don't know, something I was a little more passionate about, engaged with, plugged into. And I always really liked this generation of Porsche Cayenne. I'll actually talk a little bit about the more recent generations too, which are kind of interesting. But the original generation of Porsche Cayenne, when it came out, I actually hated. I really actually hated the design. It was really the front end. First of all, I guess as a car guy, you can kind of be offended that sports car company is coming out with an SUV or a crossover, and I guess, you know, I get some of that, but I wasn't a real Porsche guy. My buddy Brian in Detroit is the guy who kind of got me into Porsches to begin with. You know, I probably never had a strong passion for them, but I always appreciated them. So what ended up happening was when the original Cayenne came out, I hated it. The front end kind of was smushed in. It looked really forced to me. I was not a big fan of kind of this like goofy, squished up, the headlights and the front fascia. You know, the rest of it didn't really bother me so much, but it was kind of like forcing a 911 look onto an SUV, and I don't think the execution went very well. This Porsche here, because I think it's a 09, is actually just a facelifted version of that Porsche, but they hit it. So really all they did was a couple of cosmetic changes. That the front clip here is a little different, and then the rear lights, which I don't know why they bothered to change considering how subtle that difference is. But what they did was they kind of sharpened up the front end. They gave the kind of the hood a little more rake where the headlights are. Those are a little more raked, and then it kind of stops at a little bit more of a point, so it gives it a little bit more of a shark nose, and then it has a kind of a drop off here, so you kind of get a kind of a big front, brash, you know, flat front end, and I think it works so much better. It's kind of amazing. Usually refreshes are just a little bit more superfluous. They're just kind of like extra vents and all that stuff, but this I think really changed the look. In fact, at the time when the refresh came out, I actually wasn't sure if it was a redesign or a refresh, so I think it was that good. And so that kind of turned me on to this particular model. Now, they actually have gone through another generation of Cayenne since then, and I wasn't a big fan of it. It seemed to me, I really liked the Macan, but then it seemed like they took the Cayenne and tried to carry over that language, and it looks a little too torpedo-ish in my mind. Now, the 2019 Cayenne that came out, like I said, really kind of smashed it again. So they did a nice job of kind of taking that slender Macan-like look, kind of in that bigger form factor, and actually making it work. So I'm actually a big fan of the 2019. Again, I'm going to get more into that a little bit later. So this generation, this kind of tweener generation of Cayenne, was the one I really, really liked. So I was kind of set on seeing if I could find one like this. Of course, depreciation is your friend when you're looking at a car of this vintage, but I started doing some research, and as you know, they have a base and a GT and an S and things like that. And basically the base model, the V6, is apparently the one that I really wanted. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, and I'm not sure what it is about the Midwest, and I think it has to do with the temperature, maybe poor maintenance schedules by owners or something. But the V8s tended to have an oil starvation problem and cylinder scoring. And so there are various issues with the V8. I know it's more desirable to have a bigger, more powerful engine, but in this case, this is not a sports car for me. It kind of is a little weird. I'm going to talk about kind of more of the sporty-like features of this sucker, maybe in this video, but eventually. And what kills me is that it's not a sports car. It's a sportier SUV than some of the other ones, but it's not a sports car, and so I don't think we need to pretend that it is. So I had my heart set on this particular one. I did want to get something with lower mileage. You know, when I bought this, it had 50,000 plus miles on it, so it was relatively equivalent to my Terrain, although it was older. But the feature set was higher, and thanks to depreciation, like I said, this was sold to me for about 20% of the original cost. Now, this checked a lot of boxes for me in terms of the car I was looking for, but it wasn't exactly the one I was looking for. So I was looking for this vintage, I think, which is 08 to 2011. I was looking for the V6, and my preference, my ideal preference would have been, there's a dark gray Cayenne, or a dark gray color that this came in, and I thought that looked great, and that's the one I really wanted. Silver was my second choice, and the reason that I like that dark color is that, you know, I've got a gray Fiat, and I just like, you know, it's not quite as sinister as black, and, you know, and I like black, but it just shows dirt and stuff in a terrible, terrible way, especially for a daily driver. But the thing about the silver here is that I absolutely love VW silver. I remember when I had a Z3, my friend got a Volkswagen Jetta, and we both had silver cars, and I loved the silver on the Jetta far more than I liked it on my BMW. I think it was called Arctic Silver in the BMW world, and I don't know what they call it, but it is just such a bright metallic silver. I don't know how VW got it so right, but it's great, and it's the same color on here, and I think it looks good. It makes the car very bright, but one of the things that it does, you know, really well, and one of the things that I actually hate about the Porsche is that on the B pillar and then the C pillar, what they've done is they put in like these plastic inserts, which aren't body colored, but they are silver. So what ends up happening is on the silver car, they tend to kind of get washed away in your eye. If you get a black one or a darker color one, they have like these silver covers on the B and C pillar, which just stand out. It breaks up the window. Now, I think what they're trying to do, or Porsche tried to do, is visually shorten the car up. But to me, I like having kind of that whole side glass panel look like a single piece of glass as much as possible. And if you look at any other SUV, like the Audis or the Jeeps, they try to make it look like a big cut window. And Nissan Juke, I think in particular, tried to make it almost look like a helmet face mask, or the face glass on a helmet. So I'm not sure why they did that, but they did that. And in the silver, it kind of looks a little bit more natural. On the darker colors, it looks really, really awkward in my opinion. I mean, it looks like an aftermarket add-on. It looks like a Pep Boys add-on. So I hate that. The other thing that ended up happening is, like I said, because I got this car for basically 20% of the original retail price, it was a clear hands down winner against another Porsche option that I wanted to put in the mix, which was the Panamera. So, and what baffles me, and in case you're looking for it, I feel like the Cayenne is a better vehicle in terms of overall features, size, comfort, and looks, to be honest, on the Panamera. Now, the Cayenne came out, I believe, before the Panamera, so there's vintages that are older. But even when I was looking at the Panamera, you're basically 2x, twice the price of a comparable Cayenne. And so it's, you know, I think it's just they didn't make as many of them. Now, they're good looking. I should qualify my good looking. They're good looking for a Porsche, but they are butt ugly for any other particular car. Like the four-door coupe thing, whether it's the Mercedes CLS or the Aston Martin Rapide, those are all better looking. The big whale humpback is ugly, but you know, wanting a practical Porsche, it was in the mix. So I'm kind of glad that it worked out that way, because I would have driven Panamera, but the Cayenne is cheaper, and to be honest, I feel like it's a better value anyway. All right, so let's skip ahead here. So I finally find a Porsche with the lower mileage, and ended up talking to the guy and ended up buying it from this guy who is a car guy. And one of the reasons that this car had lower mileage for the year is because this guy has a lot of cars. In fact, when I got a chance to check out one of his garages, it was awesome. I spent quite a bit of time there talking about some of his cars, and you know, he had a Ferrari, and here's where we get to the 2019 Cayenne, is that he had just bought a 2019 Cayenne, and he was kind of showing me some of the things that were similar between this one and the 2019, and in fact, I can kind of see them now, and I've started to see some 2019s on the road here. First of all, the thing I love on the 2019 is that they finally went to that rear light bar, kind of like the Dodge Durango, which is funny because Porsches have light bars, and you know, the original 911s that I really love had the light bar going all the way across. What I really didn't like about this Cayenne and any of the Cayennes is that the rear lights were so big. I don't know why they were so big. I think it's to kind of hide the size of the SUV, the vehicle, because it is a pretty large vehicle. When I put this in my garage, I haven't done the measurements, but I feel like dimensionally it's bigger than my terrain. Now, my terrain was a pretty good slab-sided, you know, compact size, you know, pretty efficient in its size, and this has a little bit more curviness to it across the board, so it might just be part of that, but it seems pretty big, and so I think they put big rear lights on it to kind of visually the same size as every other SUV and kind of shrink the size down a little bit. That being said, I don't think they needed to do that. I think a light bar, kind of a little bit more 911-ish, would have looked great. And they did that on the 2019. So from the back, this Cayenne and the 2019, and I'm sorry for making this comparison. I know people are going to be like, you're comparing cars that are a decade apart. They are. They are. But it's just kind of interesting because the back is where it's most different. Now, if you look at everything from the rear spoiler to the overall shape and the overall dimensions of them when we had them side by side, they are shockingly similar. And the guy I bought it from was really the one that was pointing it out because he had the chance to drive them both. He was like, to his eye, this car and the 2019 were more similar than any other generation of Cayennes. And if you look at kind of the previous generation, kind of the Cayennes you see on the road right now, very much more shark-nosed, you know, they try to look a little more Macan. But if you look at the 2019, it has a little bit more of the triangular headlight like this one does, it has a little bit more of a flat-fronted, kind of a less pointy front end. And so, especially when they're side by side and he's kind of pointing out the details, they do look remarkably similar. And in fact, you know, in some ways you might think that the current Cayenne, the 2019, is the sequel to this one, that you might not know that there's a whole generation in between. You and I know, and you know, there's other telltale signs, but kind of interesting. So, you know, I didn't like the very first iteration of the Cayenne. I liked this one. I wasn't a big fan of the second generation, but I really do like the new 2019 one. So it's kind of funny. They had a freshman and a junior year slump on them, in my opinion. All right. So that being said, I also want to thank the guy who sold me the car because he took really good care of it, and that's really kind of the advantage of buying it from someone who has, one, a lot of cars, so they don't put a lot of miles on any one car, and two, when they are car guys like that, man, they tend to take care of them, do the maintenance on them, everything from the tune-ups to the transmission to, you know, in his case, he had taken out the floor mats when he bought it and put in floor liners, and so that was really awesome. And, you know, just overall, it's a really nice condition car, and I totally am jealous. I wish I were him. All right, so let me get into some of the things that I love and hate about my Porsche Cayenne now that I've kind of killed you with all these other stories. First of all, you know I like the style. One of the things that I don't like is this elephant hide texture dash. It is better than other SUVs of this vintage, but for a Luxo SUV, I think the pattern is a little too wide. BMW at the same time had a much more finer texture. It'll kind of look a little bit more like a skin. I get that, you know, this is supposed to be maybe a little bit different, but you know, the kind of that more matte finish of the BMW seemed a little more premium to me. This tends to look like a patterned vinyl. I also hate the left-hand start. So as you know, you put the key on the left side. It just is what it is in Porsches. It's a Le Mans start heritage thing. In the world of keyless entry, it's probably going to go away, and it's probably not even around on a lot of current model cars, but it's just kind of dumb. I get it's a novelty and it sets Porsche apart, but it is totally the antithesis of everything that you're used to getting in a car and usually having your key in your right hand. The other thing that I don't like, which a lot of people have said that they love, are the seats. So they say, wow, Germans know how to do comfortable seats. They're great. These are so comfortable. They have so many adjustments. It's true you can adjust them in a lot of ways, but a couple of things I don't like about them is that they tend to be pretty stiff. Now, you do have like lumbar and all that stuff, but even from the cushion material to the leather itself, it's all pretty stiff. It's not supple. It's not like a luxury car ride. And I get that it's similar, maybe more to the 911s, but I don't really find them all that comfortable. I mean, especially I've driven this car now on some trips, on some longer distance hauls, and I can get them to the point where I am comfortable, but I don't get them, you know, I actually have to work at it, and I don't get them to the point where I'm like, man, this is a comfortable seat. So I don't really get that. To be honest, I think my terrain seats are more comfortable. They're not bad by any means, but I don't know, just for my body shape or something, I just don't ever seem to get them in a position that I'm like, man, this feels great. So take that for what it's worth. I also like and I know this is a complaint from some people, is that there's a switch right here on the driver's side door for opening the rear hatch. And people are saying, well, they don't like that because on some cars you just hit the button and the hatch opens or closes. But on the switch, you actually have to hold it down like a window switch, and the hatch rises until you release it. I actually like that because, you know, when I have my garage door open, it lowers the ceiling height. Now, I don't know that it will hit it, but it always kind of freaks me out. So I only raise the hatch just enough that I can get my stuff out. So that's actually kind of a nice feature, and especially if you live in a parking garage or you have, you know, storage on the roof of your garage or something like that, or you have clearance issues or whatever. I love the fact that you have kind of finite control over the rear hatch. So I know people have complained about that, but I really like it. The other thing that I like about this car was that even though it's an 09, it does have hands-free Bluetooth. So a lot of these cars, especially in the base model and especially on base head units, don't have that. And don't forget, you know, the iPhone only came out in, what, 2007. So, you know, hands-free calling was not that popular. So the fact that this had hands-free Bluetooth calling built in, I don't have to do anything with it, I don't have to run an aftermarket microphone anywhere, I actually really like that too. So that's good on a Porsche. I will say that for a base model here too, it has a lot of the features that you would kind of hope for. I know that they talked about like the Porsche's getting optioned up, and especially in the head unit you could do that, but it has heated seats, heated steering wheel, it has the cup holders, it has auto headlights, it has power seats on everything, it has the universal garage door opener on it. This one has the sunroof as well, which I didn't really care about, and it even has the remote control with the little flashing headlights on it. That replication of the car on the key fob itself got drastically improved later on other Porsches. In fact, the shape of it became very Porsche-like as opposed to just kind of a slightly modified VW key fob. So that's cool for cars later on. And now my last story is, despite all that, I really was enjoying this car. I kind of like the all-time four-wheel drive. This does not have the air suspension, which I'm glad it doesn't, because those things are a pain and expensive to replace. But as you know, and as I showed you before I was able to do any of these intro videos, you know, this car struck a deer, and so for a few weeks it was out of my possession, which was kind of funny. I do appreciate State Farm making it pretty easy to get that claim submitted and done virtually, and I am also pretty appreciative that this car is built the way it was or is, and seemed to handle that pretty well too. So I'm sure I'll be doing more about this. Like I said, the only thing I've done here so far, which has been customization, is added these floor mats, which are really floor liners going into the winter here. I wanted to be able to protect the carpets, you know, as well as add a little style. I didn't want to necessarily go with a WeatherTech or an Aries or something like that. I wanted to put in some floor protection that kind of looked good. But I'm looking forward to being able to drive this car, you know, in the winter, be able to take friends around and be able to put 4, maybe even 5 people in it, and be able to have that capability to haul people, you know, in a way that's not going to break my budget. And while I will use it for commuting, the big thing is really just kind of having it when I need it, Home Depot runs and whatnot. So for the most part, I'll be driving my Fiat and putting the miles on that. Although I'll tell you what, man, I'm kind of starting to really like this car, and it kind of makes me think maybe I should be moving on from the Fiat too. I don't know. We'll see. More to come. Peter Von Panda, out.